Season, which also sees control of the House on the line, which may come down to a few tight congressional races in California. Joining me now to discuss that is candidate for California's competitive 41st District of Riverside County. It is Will Rollins. We're happy to have you. Welcome to Inside the Issues.
It's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
It's great to be here with you, and it was an interesting moment to have you also on this historic night with this address. What did you hear from President Biden tonight?
You know, I think the president is a patriot. I thought watching that address, it just resonated so much with me. A 50-year career of putting his country first, and I think it's one of the greatest examples in our history and will be written about generations from now as one of the greatest examples in our history of the message that this country is about more than one person and that it's time to pass the torch to a new generation. And as part of that next generation, I'm really excited that he's done it. I think the party's really fired up about the vice president, and I'm excited to win this congressional race in Southern California in November.
You're part of the next generation. The vice president is part of that next generation. She's a former federal prosecutor. You're a former federal prosecutor. There's a lot to talk about there. But we think about what this will do to races like yours, ultra competitive. The voter registration is very close in the 41st district. 11,000 votes separated y'all last time. It's a rematch, by the way. The Republican Ken Calvert was the incumbent. What does something like this do to a race like yours?
I'll tell you, it energizes our base. I have not seen our party this fired up since my first year out of college in 2008, when Barack Obama was our nominee. And in the last 48 hours alone, I mean, I think even our campaign has raised 6 figures online, just a down ballot House race in Southern California after the vice president became effectively the nominee for the party. And I think getting young people re-energized and also just having another fellow prosecutor at the top of the ticket, somebody who's gone after sexual predators, running against somebody who's been accused of sexual assault, who effectively ended Roe for women and reproductive freedom, versus the first woman ever to be president of the United States. That is a contrast that I am excited to run on and talk about in my own campaign. And I think the vice president's going to be a great messenger for our party.
Some of the lines of attack on the vice president as a former prosecutor are some of the similar lines of attack that your opponent, Ken Calvert, is bringing to you as a former federal prosecutor, and saying that you both are soft on crime in some ways. In fact, you brought up predators. Ken Calvert saying you reduce sentences for predators, and there's some other lines of attack. I mean, how do you respond to this prosecutorial record of yours and the attacks on it?
Yeah, I am so excited that they want to make this race about crime, because we've got a former attorney general with a great record in California of putting people behind bars who needed to be there, versus a Republican Party and people like my opponent who, you know, in 1992 actually ran from the police because as a sitting member of Congress was caught with a sex worker. I've prosecuted sex offenders. And I think having that contrast of somebody who knows what it takes to secure the border, who's gone after MS-13, the Sinaloa cartel, fentanyl traffickers, versus somebody on the other side of the aisle who says that the FBI has been infiltrated by rot, who has voted to defund federal law enforcement. That is the contrast that I would be thrilled to campaign on and look forward to heading into November. So I hope he keeps talking about it.
It's an interesting district that you're in. After redistricting, some more liberal enclaves have become part of the 41st. And in this last matchup between y'all, it was about 11,000 votes, as I mentioned, that separated you. Just talk to me about what's different this time, especially when we think about it's a corner of the Inland Empire. It's the Coachella Valley portion, too, in this district. You have a lot to discuss and a lot of different people to bring together in a way. How's it going to look for you?
Yeah, so in 22, I was a complete rookie in politics. Had a career that I loved in national security at the Justice Department, and that was a job that I had wanted to have since I was a kid. 9/11 saw the North Tower collapse, thought about enlisting in the military, but was closeted, petrified of being outed. Took me a long time to get into counterterrorism at the Department of Justice. But it wasn't until January 6th and seeing Ken Calvert vote to decertify the election that I impulsively decided to run for Congress the first time. It was a Trump +7 seat. Everybody told me it was unwinnable. The lines changed. I had 6 months after a primary to introduce myself to voters. And what we saw from that first election is where people got a chance to know me. I beat Ken Calvert by nearly 20 points in the Coachella Valley, where the market was a little more expensive. We didn't have as much time to reach voters in Corona, Lake Elsinore, Menifee. That's where I know I need to improve in 2024. And fortunately, we've already seen that in our polling. As I've introduced myself to folks on that side of the district, our numbers have gotten better.
Yeah, a lot of people say it's going to come down to those western suburbs of Riverside. And there are things that separate you and Ken Carver culturally. And you mentioned, LGBTQ issues being one of them. He says he's evolved on those issues. You're coming from a very different place on those issues. But a lot of people say it's going to come down to the kitchen table stuff, right?
Absolutely. And I hope we get to talk more about the economy, about immigration, about crime, as I mentioned a second ago, because we need more job training programs in the Inland Empire. We need higher wages in the Inland Empire. And I'm running against somebody who voted against a bipartisan infrastructure bill that is bringing six-figure jobs to a county where the median is $70,000 per household. Somebody who voted to increase taxes on working families in California when he made it harder for us to deduct our housing costs. Somebody who has made over $20 million while in Congress since 1992. I walk into rooms around my district and I ask people when I'm out there campaigning, anybody else here seen your net worth go up by $20 million? Your member of Congress has seen that happen.
And he said, I didn't become a Congress member to make money, but as you say, his net worth has gone up. And a lot of this is this conversation around earmarks. LA Times has done some reporting on this as well. Some of the ways in which some of the money which has been funneled has potentially improved his net worth in part because of some rental properties there.
Right. This is somebody who even Fox News has done a 7-minute segment talking about his use of earmarks to benefit his own personal real estate investments. And if you, as the member of Congress, know where the earmark is going in advance, and you go out and you tell your real estate partner, hey, buy up this vacant parcel of land so we can turn around and flip it as soon as a new highway exchange comes in and make almost $1 million bucks. That's a big problem. And it's bipartisan, by the way. This happens on the Democratic side of the aisle, too. We just saw Bob Menendez get convicted of felonies. People are looking for a new generation of leadership to restore faith in Washington, D.C.
And I want to tell the folks at home, we have made an invitation to Representative Calvert. He will be coming in the show. We will ask him about this, and he'll discuss his side of this earmarks issue, but it's one of the things that certainly is in the air. In our final moment, as we see Vice President Kamala Harris take on her Spirit music with Charlie XCX and Pratt. Also, they're talking about Beyonce being a campaign song. What's the song for you? Who's the artist? What's the one for this campaign for you?
Oh, this summer it's got to be espresso. I hate to just get on that bandwagon, but I do like coffee, and she's got a great jam. So
yeah, and I think we're all going to use a lot of coffee to get through all these next 2,400 hours to the election.
Amen.
Great to have you here. Thanks so much for coming in. Great to ask you some questions.
Thank you, Amrit.
Great to meet you. Thank you so much. It's Will Rollins, a candidate for the 41st Congressional District, a tight one, and as I said, we will have his opponent on the show.